It was March 17, 2009, a mild Tuesday evening in Curitiba, the capital of Brazil's Paraná state. A temperature of 18 degrees Celsius was typical for the approaching autumn in the country's southern region. In Agua Verde, one of the city's most traditional neighborhoods, a birthday party was underway in the event hall of the Palmeiras Building, an upper-middle-class residential condominium built in the 1990s. Renato Oliveira, a 34-year-old real estate entrepreneur, and his wife Carolina Mendes, a 32-year-old university psychology professor, were guests at the party celebrating the 40th birthday of their longtime friend Pedro Andrade. In their social circle, Renato and Carolina were known for being exceptionally punctual and methodical. They arrived at the party at 7:30 p.m., precisely the time printed on the invitation. According to the other 37 guests, the couple seemed entirely themselves throughout the celebration. They chatted animatedly, joined in the games organized by the host, and even helped serve the cake around 10:15 p.m. Carolina had even mentioned to a few friends her plans to start a doctoral program in the latter half of the year. The last confirmed sighting of Renato and Carolina was at 11:42 p.m. They were saying goodbye to close friends, explaining that they needed to leave as they had early commitments the next morning. Marcos Pereira, a guest and one of Renato's work colleagues, later stated in his deposition that he saw the couple walking toward the building's elevator. However, no one witnessed the exact moment they left the building. The next morning, Claudia Mendes, Carolina's sister, tried calling to confirm details for a family lunch planned for the weekend. After several unanswered calls, she decided to stop by the couple's apartment in the Batel neighborhood, about 3 kilometers from the party. When she arrived, she found the apartment empty. The bed was untouched, suggesting that Renato and Carolina had never returned home. The couple's car, a black 2008 Honda Civic, was not in the garage of their own building. Worried, Claudia contacted Pedro, the party host, who confirmed seeing the couple say their goodbyes around 11:40 p.m., but admitted he hadn't seen them physically exit the building. It was then that the first alarm bells began to ring. Something was wrong. At 2:27 p.m. that day, March 18th, Claudia filed a missing persons report with Curitiba's Homicide and Personal Protection Division, the DHPP. Delegate Ricardo Almeida immediately took the case, finding the disappearance of 2 individuals with no history of psychological, financial, or apparent family problems deeply concerning. The first 48 hours were crucial. Police reviewed the security camera footage from the condominium where the party was held and made a disturbing discovery. The couple had never left through the building's main gate. The images clearly showed every other guest leaving, but there was no record of Renato and Carolina. Their car was never seen exiting the garage either. The investigation had just taken a far more serious turn. The building was given a cursory search that same day, including the party hall, common areas, and garage, but no sign of the couple or anything suspicious was found. The search expanded to hospitals, highways, and even the nearby Baragui Lake, with firefighters assisting but yielded no results. Renato and Carolina's cell phones had been turned off since the early hours of the 18th, with their last known location pinging in the immediate vicinity of the Palmeiras Building. The couple's credit cards and bank accounts remained untouched, which seemed to rule out the theory of a planned escape. As the couple's disappearance gained traction in local and then national media, pressure on the authorities mounted. Renato and Carolina's families were well connected in Curitiba. Renato's father, Roberto Oliveira, was a retired judge, while Carolina's mother had served as the municipal secretary of education years earlier. On the third day, the police formed a task force dedicated exclusively to the case. All 37 party guests were interviewed in detail, and their accounts were consistent. The couple had shown no signs of distress, had not argued with anyone, and seemed to have left the party naturally. A breakthrough came when investigators, after a meticulous analysis of the security footage, discovered a 12-minute gap from 11:48 p.m. to midnight when the building's surveillance system had been interrupted. This failure, initially attributed to a technical glitch, now raised suspicions of intentional sabotage. The system's maintenance manager, Rogerio Santos, stated that such a failure had never occurred before and that the equipment had been serviced just 2 weeks prior. On March 25th, a week after the disappearance, theories began to swirl. A local newspaper published a story suggesting Renato was involved in real estate deals with individuals under investigation for money laundering. Police pursued this lead but found no concrete evidence to support it. The couple's finances were solid and transparent. Another line of inquiry explored a possible kidnapping. Yet no ransom demand was ever made, and there were no signs of a struggle in the party hall or anywhere else in the building. In May, an interesting testimony emerged from Paulo Ribeiro, the building's night janitor. He recalled hearing a strange noise coming from the laundry area around midnight on the night of the disappearance. He described it as a dull thud, as if something heavy had fallen. Paulo reported that he had checked the area briefly, but it was dark. And seeing nothing immediately suspicious, he chalked it up to the building's machinery and thought no more of it. This testimony prompted a new, more thorough search of the laundry room, but once again nothing was found. As the months passed, the case grew cold. The lack of concrete leads and the complete disappearance of the couple and their vehicle left police to consider multiple hypotheses. A voluntary escape to another country, a perfect crime committed by professionals, or even an accident in a remote, undiscovered area. In December 2009, the family hired a private investigator, Marcelo Ramos, a former police officer with 20 years of experience. Ramos meticulously retraced the official investigation, re-interviewing witnesses and searching for angles the police might have missed. One of Ramos's discoveries was particularly intriguing. He found a food delivery driver who claimed to have seen a black Honda Civic similar to the couple's being driven by a lone man around 1:30 a.m. on the morning of the disappearance. On the BR 277 highway that connects Curitiba to the coast. This lead had never been verified by the police and prompted new searches along the Paraná coastline in early 2010, but again, no trace of the vehicle or the couple was found. By September 2010, the case was formally classified as open but inactive. The families, however, never gave up hope, holding monthly demonstrations and maintaining a website dedicated to the case. The years ticked by, and the case of Renato and Carolina became one of the most baffling disappearances in the state's criminal history. Between 2011 and 2015, various sightings were reported from across Brazil and even abroad, but all were investigated and ultimately dismissed. Then, in 2016, 7 years after they vanished, the case was cracked open by the most unlikely of investigators. Maria Eduarda, the 17-year-old daughter of Pedro Andrade, the party's host, chose the disappearance of Renato and Carolina as the subject for a school project on unsolved cases. During her research, she interviewed her father and other guests. In a conversation with Tiago Bueno, a close friend of her father's, a piece of information that had never been reported came to light. Tiago mentioned seeing Renato in a heated conversation with an unidentified man in the garage around 11 o'clock p.m., shortly before the couple was last seen. According to Tiago, it wasn't quite an argument, but the conversation seemed tense and private. When asked why he never told the police, Tiago claimed he didn't think it was relevant at the time and, in the shock of the disappearance, had forgotten the detail. This new information was immediately passed to the delegate. The investigation was actively reopened. The security footage was reanalyzed with more advanced technology, which allowed for the identification of the man in the garage. He was Fernando Moraes, a former business partner of Renato's who had not been on the official guest list. Fernando was located in another state and brought in for questioning in October 20. He confirmed the conversation but denied any involvement, claiming they had reconciled an old business dispute. His alibi for the hours following the disappearance appeared solid. By 2018, new 3D scanning technology was used to map the entire Palmeiras Building, searching for hidden compartments. The results were negative. In January 2020, the case was featured on a popular Brazilian true crime podcast. The episode prompted hundreds of tips, but one stood out. A former maintenance worker from the building contacted the show. He spoke of a hidden space, a void beneath the laundry room staircase that didn't appear on any of the building's official blueprints. According to him, an architectural flaw during construction in the early 90s had created an empty space of about 2 by 3 meters. It had been sealed with a false wall, and very few people knew it existed. On March 23, 2022, 13 years and 6 days after the couple disappeared, police, armed with a court order, conducted a new operation at the Palmeiras Building. Using ground-penetrating radar, technicians identified an anomaly in the structure beneath the staircase. After consulting with engineers, the team decided to break through the wall. What they found shocked everyone present. Behind a thin brick wall, there was indeed an undocumented space, and inside were the skeletal remains of 2 people. DNA tests later confirmed the identities: Renato Oliveira and Carolina Mendes. The bodies were in an advanced state of decomposition, dressed in the same clothes described by the party guests. With them were their wedding rings, Renato's wallet, Carolina's small purse, 2 cell phones destroyed by time and moisture, and a set of keys, including the key to the Honda Civic that was never found. There were no obvious signs of violence on the bones, complicating the determination of the cause of death. The discovery answered the question of where they were, but it raised an even more chilling one. How did they end up in a sealed, hidden chamber? The answer began to take shape as investigators examined the structure of the staircase and the hidden space itself. The analysis revealed that a section of the laundry room floor right next to the stairs had a structural flaw that could give way under excessive weight. It appeared that a section of the floor, roughly 2 to 3 feet wide, functioned as a kind of unintentional trap door. Experts concluded that if 2 people were to stand on that exact spot, the floor could give way, plunging them into the hidden space below. This hypothesis gained traction when stress tests on similar sections of the flooring confirmed its fragility. Furthermore, the position in which the bodies were found, one partially on top of the other, was consistent with such a fall. But why had no one heard any cries for help? The answer lay in the nature of the space itself. The thick walls, its location in the building's sub-basement, and the fact that the laundry room was seldom used, especially at night, had created a perfect acoustic prison. Any screams would have been nearly impossible to hear from outside the area. Suddenly, the dull thud mentioned by the janitor, Paulo Ribeiro, in his 2009 statement now made perfect sense. It was likely the sound of the couple falling through the collapsed floor. Toxicology exams performed on hair samples and residues found with the remains detected no substances that could have caused immediate unconsciousness. The most probable conclusion reached by the experts was that, after the fall, the couple sustained injuries that incapacitated or disoriented them, possibly concussions, and they eventually succumbed to dehydration and lack of oxygen in the confined space. As for the missing Honda Civic, the investigation took an unexpected turn in April of 2022. Following news reports about the discovery of the bodies, a man named Andre Martins came to the police with a partial confession. He had stolen the vehicle from the Palmeiras Building's parking garage on the very night of the disappearance, taking advantage of a moment when the gate opened for another resident to exit. Andre claimed to have no knowledge of the couple's disappearance, believing he was simply stealing an empty car. According to his statement, the vehicle was taken to an illegal chop shop on the outskirts of Curitiba, where it was dismantled and its parts sold on the black market. This belated confession explained why the car was never found and why security footage never showed the couple driving away. In June of 2022, the police investigation was officially closed. The official cause of death was registered as accidental, resulting from a fall followed by incapacitation in a confined space with dehydration and asphyxiation as contributing factors. The case had a profound impact on Brazilian legislation regarding building safety. In December of 2022, the state of Paraná passed the Renato and Carolina law, which requires regular structural inspections for buildings over 15 years old, with special attention given to spaces not documented in the original blueprints. For the families, the closure brought a mixture of relief and renewed grief. After 13 years of anguish and uncertainty, they could finally hold a proper funeral for Renato and Carolina. The ceremony held at the municipal cemetery of Curitiba brought together hundreds of people, including investigators who had dedicated years of their lives to the case. Renato's father, Roberto Oliveira, a former judge, established a foundation in the name of his son and daughter-in-law, dedicated to aiding the search for missing persons in Brazil, particularly in long-term cases. The institution partners with law enforcement agencies, offering technological resources and psychological support to families. The years following the discovery of Renato and Carolina's bodies brought profound changes to how missing persons cases are handled in Brazil, especially in Paraná. The case's impact extended far beyond the state's borders, influencing investigation protocols across the country. In September of 2022, the Paraná Civil Police instituted the Oliveira Mendes Protocol, a set of specific guidelines for disappearance investigations. It includes, among other measures, the mandatory full scanning of buildings where individuals were last seen, the use of advanced technologies from the very first days of an investigation, and the maintenance of dedicated teams even after the initial months yield no results. The Palmeiras Building itself underwent a complete structural renovation in 2023. During the process, 3 other undocumented spaces were discovered in different areas of the building. Thankfully, they were empty. The building's management, along with the residents, decided to transform the former laundry room into a memorial dedicated to the couple, with a plaque that recounts the tragedy and serves as a warning about the importance of structural safety. The case also prompted a review of civil construction standards in Brazil. The Council of Architecture and Urbanism and the Federal Council of Engineering and Agronomy jointly issued new guidelines for architectural project documentation, demanding full transparency about all spaces, including those resulting from structural alterations during construction. In the judicial sphere, the lawsuit against the Palmeiras Building's developer, the Horizonte Construction Company, resulted in a multi-million-dollar settlement for the families of Renato and Carolina. Although the company argued that the building complied with the standards in effect at the time of its construction in the early 1990s, the court found there was negligence in the documentation of the spaces and in verifying the structural strength of the laundry room floor. As for Andre Martins, the man who confessed to stealing the couple's car, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison for aggravated theft, with his sentence reduced due to his belated cooperation with the investigation. His confession, though crucial to closing the case, sparked controversy, with many questioning whether the punishment fit the prolonged suffering his silence had caused the families. The Renato and Carolina case has become a subject of study in police academies and criminology colleges throughout Brazil. The combination of factors that led to the disappearance, an undocumented structural fault, a fall into a hidden space, and the coincidental theft of the vehicle, is considered a rare example of how seemingly unrelated circumstances can converge to create a nearly perfect mystery. In 2024, a documentary series produced by an international streaming service chronicled the entire story of the disappearance, investigation, and discovery. Titled 13 Years of Silence, the production featured interviews with family members, investigators, forensic experts, and even Paulo Ribeiro, the janitor who heard the dull thud on the night of the disappearance. The series gained international acclaim and brought global attention to the issue of missing persons in Brazil. The Renato and Carolina Foundation, established by Renato's father, expanded its operations to 5 Brazilian states by 2025. With a team of former police officers, volunteer forensic experts, and trauma-specialized psychologists, the organization has already contributed to solving more than 30 long-term disappearance cases using cutting-edge technology financed by private donations. One of the Foundation's most important initiatives was the creation of a unified national database for missing persons, sharing information between different states and regions. This system, implemented in partnership with the Ministry of Justice, has already facilitated the identification of dozens of people living without an identity in vulnerable situations, many of them suffering from mental conditions that prevented them from providing information about their past. Carolina's sister, Carolina Mendes, became a recognized activist for the rights of families of the missing. Her advocacy was instrumental in the 2024 passage of a federal law that guarantees free psychological and legal assistance to families of people missing for more than 30 days. The disappearance of a loved one is a form of suspended grief, one without resolution. The least the state can do is ensure that families do not face this painful journey alone, Claudia declared during the bill's vote in the federal Senate. For the residents of Curitiba, the case remains vivid in the collective memory. Barigui Park, where the initial searches for the couple were conducted, now hosts a sculpture titled Reunion, donated by the Renato and Carolina Foundation. The work, which depicts 2 human silhouettes merging into a single form, symbolizes not only the couple's tragedy but also the hope that other missing people will be found. If you have watched this far, it is because you care about these cases that scar families forever. Leave a comment saying, "I watched until the end," so I can know who you are and who truly cares about the search for truth. 13 years is a long time to live in uncertainty. For the families of Renato Oliveira and Carolina Mendes, it was 4,748 days of unanswered questions, of hope alternating with despair, of birthdays and holidays marked by absence. The discovery of the bodies in 2022, though devastating, brought the closure necessary for the grieving process to finally begin. The case forces us to reflect on the fragility of life and how seemingly improbable circumstances can align to create tragedies. A structural flaw in a building, a floor that gives way under the weight of 2 people, a space hidden from official blueprints, and the coincidental theft of a vehicle. Each element in isolation might have resulted in less severe consequences. Together, they created one of the most intriguing mysteries in Brazilian criminal history. There is also an important reflection on investigative methods. For years, the police focused their efforts on more cinematic hypotheses: kidnapping, a crime of passion, a voluntary escape, connections to organized crime. The truth, when it was finally revealed, proved to be more mundane and, for that very reason, more difficult to detect. It is a reminder that sometimes the simplest answer is the correct one, even when it seems improbable at first glance. Technological advancements also played a crucial role in solving the case. The ground-penetrating radar that identified the hidden space was not available or not used for this type of investigation when the disappearance occurred in 2009. How many other mysteries of the past could be solved with the tools we have today? For the community of the Palmeiras Building, the case left a complex legacy. On one hand, the condominium was marked by the tragedy, its name forever associated with the case. On the other, the complete renovation carried out after the discovery transformed it into one of the safest buildings in the city, with every square inch documented and verified. The memorial in the former laundry room serves as a constant reminder of the importance of transparency and safety in architectural projects. More broadly, the Renato and Carolina case permanently altered how Brazilian society views disappearances. Once often treated as low-priority issues unless there were clear signs of a crime, disappearances now receive immediate attention and dedicated resources from the very first moment. The understanding that time is crucial in these situations finally seems to have taken hold within the public security system. The legislative changes inspired by the case, the Renato and Carolina law in Paraná, and the federal law for assistance to families of the missing, represent significant progress in protecting both people's physical safety and the emotional well-being of those facing the anguish of not knowing a loved one's whereabouts. For Brazilian forensic science, the case established new paradigms. The combination of traditional investigative techniques with advanced technologies like 3D scanning, DNA analysis of degraded remains, and ground-penetrating radar has become the standard in complex cases. Forensic laboratories across the country have modernized their equipment, inspired in part by the challenges faced in the Curitiba case. There is also a philosophical aspect to this story. The disappearance of Renato and Carolina reminds us of the unpredictability of human existence. One moment they were celebrating life at a birthday party, making plans for the future. The next, they became victims of an improbable series of circumstances that no one could have foreseen. The case continues to fascinate the public, both in Brazil and internationally, precisely because of its uniqueness. Unlike other disappearances with tragic outcomes, there was no perpetrator, no premeditated crime, no obscure motive, only a fatal combination of structural failures and coincidences. It is a disturbing reminder of how chance can completely alter the course of human lives. For students of architecture and civil engineering, the case has become a mandatory study. Brazilian universities have incorporated the Palmeiras Building case study into their curricula, emphasizing the ethical and legal responsibility of professionals in accurately documenting every aspect of a construction project. As Roberto Oliveira, Renato's father, once said, "My son and my daughter-in-law died because of a space that shouldn't have existed in a building that should have been safe." In March of 2025, on the 16th anniversary of the disappearance and the 3rd anniversary of the discovery of the bodies, the Renato and Carolina National Center for Missing Persons was inaugurated in Curitiba. With public and private funding, the center brings together cutting-edge technology, specialized professionals, and a multidisciplinary approach to disappearance cases. It is considered a model to be replicated in other Brazilian states. At the inauguration ceremony, Carolina Mendes, Carolina's sister, spoke words that summarize the case's legacy. "Renato and Carolina are no longer with us, but their story has forever changed the way we deal with the missing in Brazil. If that change helps find others to bring peace to other families, then there is some meaning in the tragedy we have lived through." This case teaches us above all about the importance of persistence. For 13 years, family, friends, dedicated investigators, and even strangers moved by empathy refused to let Renato and Carolina be forgotten. This unwavering determination eventually led to the truth, however painful it was. For anyone who follows cases of missing people, the story of Renato and Carolina serves as a powerful reminder. Never give up. Never stop searching. Never let time erase the memory of those who are absent, because, as this case has shown, answers can emerge even after more than a decade of silence. If you have followed this story to the end, I thank you for your attention and dedication. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more documentaries like this, which reveal the hidden truths behind the mysteries that have marked our society. Please leave a like and share this with friends and family who are also interested in true crime and real investigations. And so, continue to be a part of this community, one that believes every missing person deserves to be found, every family deserves answers, and every truth deserves to be brought to light. Until the next case.